mynews.studio.
Picture a ship quietly moving across the mid-Atlantic ridge. As of today, that stretch of water falls under a new global treaty. The big question is, will it actually make a difference for the ocean's future?
And the date today is January 23, 2026. Just 6 days ago, the High Seas Treaty came into effect. For the first time, most of the world's ocean, about 2/3 of its surface and 95% of its volume, is covered by an international agreement. That's a major change. Why did it take so long, and what exactly does it change?
For decades, the high seas were almost lawless. Beyond national borders, anyone could fish, mine, or run shipping routes with very few rules. The result was overfishing, habitat destruction, and what you might call a legal free-for-all. This new treaty, officially the BBNJ Agreement, sets up, for the first time, a structure for managing and protecting those areas.
Was there a specific event that sparked this, or was it more of a gradual process?
Talks started in the early 2000s, but nothing really moved until 2023. That's when 60 countries ratified the treaty, which set a countdown in motion. Now, 6 days into enforcement, 83 parties have signed, including the EU and many of its members. But it's important to note that some major countries, like the US and India, haven't joined yet.
Right. Let's get into the details. What does this treaty actually let countries do now that wasn't possible before?
First, it lets countries set up marine protected areas that are enforceable under international law, even in waters that don't belong to any one country. Second, any activity that could impact the high seas now has to go through an environmental impact assessment. That covers fishing, shipping, mining, and even companies looking for new genetic material in marine life. Everything has to be publicly justified.
And regarding those marine genetic resources, pharmaceuticals, enzymes, things like that, how does the treaty say those benefits should be shared?
There's a system for benefit sharing. So, if a company discovers a valuable compound out in the high seas and profits from it, they're expected to share those benefits, money or otherwise, with all members of the treaty, not just the country where they're based.
That sounds promising, but the ocean is vast. How are these rules supposed to be enforced? Who actually checks if a ship is following the law?
Enforcement is tough. The treaty relies on existing organizations, like regional fisheries management bodies and the International Seabed Authority, for much of the monitoring. There's also a new preparatory commission setting up the structure, a secretariat, a scientific and technical body. But honestly, if the major fleets aren't involved, enforcement will be uneven.
So, are there concrete penalties for breaking the rules? Or is this more about encouraging good behavior through reporting?
Potentially both. The compliance and penalty procedures are still being worked out. But there's already concern about ships registering under countries that haven't joined, so-called flags of convenience, to sidestep the rules.
Let's look at industry. For fishing, mining, shipping, what changes right now?
Immediately, they have to conduct environmental impact assessments before starting new projects. That can slow things down, but it also brings transparency. For example, a company planning deep-sea mining now has to outline the impacts of its work and get approval. If a pharmaceutical firm wants to collect genetic material, it must negotiate benefit sharing in advance.
And what about developing countries? Traditionally, they've struggled to monitor their own waters or benefit from these resources.
The treaty tries to address that. Developed countries have promised to help build capacity and transfer technology, so providing equipment, training, and access. There's also financial support. The EU, for example, has a €40 million global ocean program to help developing countries participate in marine protection and benefit from genetic discoveries.
So, what are the main barriers now? Is it mostly about getting more countries on board, or are there technical hurdles too?
It's both. Getting major economies to sign on is a real challenge. Without them, enforcement is fragmented. Technically, monitoring is difficult. Tracking every vessel on the high seas isn't simple. There are also sovereignty issues. Some countries are wary of what they see as international interference.
What's next? Is there already movement, or do we just wait to see what happens?
The first conference of the parties will happen within a year. They'll finalize the rules, set up permanent bodies, and start reviewing proposals for new marine protected areas. In the meantime, countries and NGOs are already mapping out critical sites. So the next year, leading up to that first conference, is crucial for putting the law into practice.
For people listening, can international law really protect the global commons? Or will gaps in weak enforcement hold things back?
That's what's at stake. This is the first broad attempt to govern the high seas for everyone's benefit, not just a few. How well it works will show us whether large-scale global cooperation can really address environmental problems.
We'll be watching. The ocean's future, and maybe ours, depends on what happens next.
Thanks for tuning in. The High Seas Treaty is now in force, but making it work is just beginning.
Thank you for listening. This episode was brought to you by mynews.studio. Try it now for free.